This Retail Technology Spotlight Series podcast is brought to you by the Omni Talk Retail Podcast Network. Ranked in the top 10% of all podcasts globally and currently ranked in the top 100 of all business podcasts on Apple Podcasts, the Omni Talk Retail Podcast Network is a network that we hope makes you feel a little smarter, but most importantly, a little happier each week too. And this podcast is just one of the many great podcasts you can find from us here at Omni Talk Retail, alongside our Retail Daily Minute, which brings you a curated selection of the most important retail headlines every morning, and our signature podcast, the Retail Fast Five, that breaks down each week the top 5 headlines making waves in the world of omnichannel retailing. And that comes your way every Wednesday afternoon. Hello, everyone. I am one of your co-hosts for today's interview, Chris Walton.
And I'm Ann Mazinga.
And, there's been a lot of talk around AI. We heard it in NRF Paris. We've heard about it from Shop Talk Fall from some of our friends who were able to attend that. And honestly, there's probably been a little bit too much, I think one could say. And I'm guessing a lot of people are thinking that anyway. But we're going to talk about it again. And that is because as an industry, I don't think we've done a good job of defining AI. We're talking about it too broadly, and specifically which types of AI are most useful and in which settings. And so to help us do that, we're going to examine warehouse operations. We're going to look at AI through the lens of warehouse operations. And to help us with that, we have invited Dematic's product manager, John Mabe, onto today's show. John, thanks for joining us at Omni Talk.
Hey, Chris, hey, Ann. How you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Great
to have you. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
John, I'm curious, maybe you wouldn't mind starting with this. Like Chris said, there's a lot of discussion around AI and its applications, but in your role as a product manager, how do you think of AI and its application, especially within warehousing? Like what framework would you recommend that we use to start off?
I think from a product perspective, first it's probably best to break down AI into a couple like distinct categories, because it's not just a single technology, it's more of a toolkit. So the way we kind of look at that is there's one category is optimization AI. So think of that as kind of the brains in a warehouse that makes decisions. So what's the next best order to work on, for example. Then there's vision and perception AI. So that's the eyes of your operation. That's using cameras and sensors to understand the physical state of a warehouse in real time. And then kind of a third category, which I think most people are familiar with, is kind of the ChatGPT, generative AI, a new interface or conversational partner of how you interact with your systems.
Got it, John. So let's click into those a little bit then. So optimization AI, the first one you said, when I hear that, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that's not anything new. Like, I feel like I've been hearing about that forever, since the history of doing Omni Talk. We've been doing the show for 8 years. So is that true? And then number one, if that is the case, where you mentioned a place where it is applicable, but where is it most applicable in the warehouse environment?
Yeah, you're right. Optimization is not new. And even pre-AI, right? People have been using math to make decisions in warehouses. Yes, exactly, math. So if you were to take, inventory optimization is pretty a big blanket umbrella where it can be applied really well. So if you were to take slotting, for example, historically, warehouses have used, ABC classifications or velocities or order affinities, which items are typically ordered together to make these slotting decisions. And you can get a lot of value out of that pretty quickly. The main issue there is that is kind of static and rules-based, and it doesn't really evolve over time. So where AI has started to come in is adding better inputs and adaptivity. With supervised learning, you can really, really truly predict the velocity of SKUs. Even, the really hard things to predict, the fast movers are fairly easy, but, maybe the medium and slow movers, seasonality, different channels, promotions, and you combine that with reinforcement learning. We can go further where the AI can learn and figure out how to best reslot the inventory to deal with, an upcoming flash sale or promotions or back to school special. So it's really able to adapt to shifting demands over time and self-learn and really discover non-obvious patterns that our traditional optimization couldn't do very well in the past.
Got it. So, but the strict use case is really around forecasting for inventory, labor planning. I'm curious, so John, if it has been around for so long, how many companies and particularly retailers that you, in your experience, are actually using it? Like, is everyone using it, or is a portion? Like, what's your take there?
I'd say it's a pretty, fairly small portion. I think
Really?
the largest players are using it. I mean, I think most companies by now are using some sort of optimization using math models, right? But as far as true AI, it's still fairly limited in its use. I mean, it's mostly the bigger players that are using it that have access to really good data, and have their data structured in a way that the AI can leverage it.
What keeps the smaller players from going all in on this? It seems like it'd be even more advantageous to somebody like that who doesn't have the labor bandwidth.
I mean, part of it is is the structuring of your data. Like if it's not structured properly,
Okay.
it's hard for these models to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're starting to see kind of like a crawl, walk, run approach where people are starting to use, even the smaller players are starting to use it, but maybe they're using it more as a decision recommendation. So it's not necessarily completely embedded into their systems yet. It's more, hey, this is the forecast that our model came up with. Here's a report, and you can take action on it. But as far as like a fully automated, it's kind of the larger players that are kind of at that stage.
That makes sense.
How does growth play into it too, John? Like if say if I'm a smaller player and I'm not really sure my demand, I'm growing, like is it as applicable to somebody that, like, to your point, like is more established and has very consistent patterns in what they're putting through their warehouse every single day? Is that factor into it at all, or am I overthinking it? I'm curious.
I mean, it should be, I think as AI gets more advanced, it's able to adapt better. So
should be able to do either one, right? Yeah.
It really should be able to do either one. Yeah.
Right.
Well, let's talk a little bit too about vision and perception, John. Can you explain kind of how that's coming into play?
Sure. So vision is, we view that as like foundational for getting to this, people talk about lights out warehouse where it's a very autonomous run warehouse, right? So optimization would be a big part of that. Vision would also be a huge part of that. And that's really about, using cameras and sensors to process information and make decisions in real time. So right now that's very limited in the scope of how that's being used. So you've got, like process integrity. Let's say you have, a tote on a conveyor. Is it positioned appropriately on the conveyor? That's not going to create an issue downstream. So it's really about how can we minimize errors that take a lot of time to fix, downstream from that process. And then, spotting, like if let's say there's a jam on a conveyor, the camera can see that and alert someone before it becomes like a major downline event. And then probably the other area where it's applicable now in these kind of narrow use cases around kind of safety. Are humans working safely with robots? Are humans working at a workstation safely, like in an ergonomic fashion, so they're not getting fatigued? Like a camera and AI can pick up on that. And so that's, it's kind of being deployed now in these kind of somewhat narrow use cases, adding value, but not quite there of a, lights out type warehouse, I guess.
So John, are these systems, these computer vision systems, for lack of a better way to put it, are they fixed position? Are they on robots? We heard at NRF, we were surprised, Anna and I both were surprised at NRF how many, people were talking about robotics impacting both in-store operations, but also particularly the warehouse operations. So like is what you're describing, it sounds like you're talking more fixed position camera systems, but also potentially the application on robotics moving throughout the warehouse too. Give us the lay of the land there. How do you think about all that?
I mean, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, that kind of example I gave you were more fixed, like at a workstation or on a conveyor to spot issues. But there are cameras in robotics and AMRs to make sure that they're navigating safely through the warehouse, just like they're, cameras in a Tesla for self-driving. So that's a similar concept. And I think we are at the early stages. I mean, humanoid robots are all kind of really in the media now. And that is something that is being worked towards. The technology is still very early, but that's quite interesting.
what needs to happen, do you think, John, before we get to that point? I mean, is it mostly perception? Is it level of comfort? Is it the technology needing to get to a certain state? Like, where are we in that, and what needs to happen before we kind of get to that next level?
Yeah, so I guess I probably address that from a vision perspective. Like, so from a vision perspective, it's not good enough for a robot just to see a product and understand what it is. It really needs to, let's say you want to have a robot that does picking. You want to have a humanoid robot that is picking inventory from a inventory tote and placing it into an order shipping box. It has to have a deep understanding of how to interact with that product. So it needs to be able to answer pretty complex questions in milliseconds. These are types of questions humans just do innately, but needs to understand, based on the product, how should I grasp the product? What is the orientation when I place it in the shipping box? Can I place it on top of a bag of potato chips, or is it going to crush it? So there's a lot of there's a lot of questions it needs to run through. It needs to run through those very, very quickly. Whereas humans, we just know, right? We just pick this up and be like, I can't put this on top of potato chips, it will crush it. So, and there's a lot of buzz there, but the vision is quite important, to unlock that technology.
That's interesting, John. And I remember Amazon Vulcan, seeing some videos on that in terms of how that works. It kind of gets at what you're saying, like, a robot that can kind of get those use cases, edge cases. But I'm curious because, like I said before, I was surprised at NRF how many people were talking about like humanoid robots. And part of the pundit of me doing this for 8 years says, okay, that's because robots are always the sexy thing. And are we just saying that because they're the sexy thing? Like if you were to predict, like, how far out are we from a humanoid robot, functioning at scale in a warehouse environment? Like, are we talking 10 years, 15 years, 5 years? Like, what's your take?
Well, let me start that off with saying, I do feel like humanoids will be a big part in warehouses, and one of the major draws is they fit right in. Okay. They have the arms and legs, or maybe they're on wheels, but they can fit right into a warehouse environment without any costly infrastructure changes. And there's a lot of really major players that are pouring a lot of money into it. So my optimistic take is that will gain traction and there will be manufacturing scale at some point. Now, I view where we are today is we're past the sci-fi demo stage. When I was 10, like, I watched the Jetsons all the time. I wanted Rosie to clean my room and I wanted to fly a car, and we're not there yet, but we are past that sci-fi demo-ish type stage, right? So there are real warehousing. You mentioned Amazon Vulcan. There's our real warehouse and manufacturing pilots happening today. I expect those to continue. Those use cases happening today are fairly simple. They're not super complex use cases, but the complexity of the capabilities they'll be able to do will grow over time. And just the fact that a humanoid could do is multi-purpose. It can do picking and packing and receiving and maintenance. If people that are old enough that, pre-smartphone, you might have had a GPS, an iPod, calculator, and a telephone. That's all in one device now. So general purpose usually wins in technology. So I feel like we'll get there. It will take time. And vision is a big part of it. But I think you also have kind of the boring stuff, like, you got to get the cost down. Battery has to have enough life. Right. Needs to be able to charge fast. So there's a lot of other elements there, but I feel like it will come together. As far as a time frame, it's really hard to say at scale. Yeah. I feel like over the next 5 years, you'll see a lot more increasingly complex use cases being done, and then eventually it will kind of just come together, kind of like a smartphone did over time.
Got it. So I take away two things from what you said there. I think one, it's closer probably than I think, based on how I set up that question. It's probably closer than I think it is. And then two, like I said at the outset, like, even the word humanoid is kind of a disservice, because a humanoid can come in many shapes, sizes, and forms too, if I'm hearing you right, John. And so, like, yeah, that's going to change and shape as the future plays out here too. All right, well, let's go to the last one then. LLMs. How are warehouse operations deploying that side of AI?
This is fairly new. Everyone uses ChatGPT. Yeah. This is about, connecting that into your warehouse data, a ChatGPT, like, LLM. And, kind of the value we see is that, today, to really get to information to understand your operation, there's, people have dashboards for KPIs and you can see that, but it's not really, you can't get to the deep understanding or kind of root cause if there's problems. You might have to go to multiple sources, export some data to a spreadsheet, I don't know, create a pivot table. So it takes a long time to get to insights. And our feelings of this kind of LLM models, you'll be able to ask questions like, where is the bottleneck today? And the LLM will be able to go off and triangulate data from multiple different sources and then source a more intelligent answer and display that back to the user, within seconds, and even display it as like a chart with trends or whatever format is appropriate. So it's really about kind of dramatically reducing the time from question or you have a problem to solve to actually getting insights out of it and just being able to solve problems faster.
I have so many questions for you, John, here, especially like, you use that example of like the LLM model being able to ask like, where's the friction point here? How far out are we then from like that question being posed to like an AI employee, and then the AI employee answers that and is really running the whole thing themselves?
I think that's kind of the ultimate vision where it's, many different agents that have a, very specific task. And I am the SKU demand forecasting agent and I'm the slotting agent. And they collaborate together to make decisions and ultimately, create the task and have the task executed automatically. I don't see that happening overnight. This is like kind of like the crawl, walk, run path to that future. So the crawl side is more around decision support, where a human is in the loop. Maybe if we go back to the a forecast, maybe it surfaces a risk. Like, hey, these SKUs we think these SKUs will be out of stock between 2 and 4 today. Here's what we recommend that you do. And the human looks at it and says, yeah, I'm good with that. And then they get those tasks executed.
Sure.
And so the humans are still making the decisions there, and they're not just turning the keys over to AI. And we need to build trust and validate the technology. And then I think from there you go into a more decision intelligence where the AI is proposing actions, and maybe they're proposing a confidence in those actions. And then maybe there are some more systematic rules that are configured, and you say, okay, if the confidence is above 90%, automatically create those tasks. If it's lower, service them to me. I'll review them and either reject them or move forward with them. And so that would be kind of a feedback mechanism that will also help the AI train, and then also keep the people still in charge.
So certainly just like there's still the human in the loop, and there's still somebody that's analyzing the data that's coming together, but it's fewer people that need to be part of that are making those decisions, so it can speed up manufacturing or speed up the process of whatever those robotics are trying to do. Got it.
That's right. And I think, longer term, I think the agents are more running the building, you could say.
Sure.
But there's always human oversight and the strategic direction, and guardrails need to be in place for safety and your labor rules and depending on the market you're in and your KPI targets. So there's still human involvement there and overall strategic leadership. But yeah, ultimately, I think you will see AIs making more decisions independently and collectively, I guess.
So John, it sounds like at the start, it's more of a management tool and a productivity tool. And I'm curious, how far out is that? Like, are people starting this? Like, are you seeing people try to do this?
Yeah, I mean, the decision support is happening now, where we will recommend. Okay. So we'll recommend, hey, we have this AI algorithm. We've forecasted the demand for the next hour, 4 hours, day, whatever. This is what you should replenish. And then the humans will make the decision like, yep, of these 100 that you recommended, I'll do the top 80 or something. So that's happening today. And the decision intelligence is probably the next phase where we kind of have more rules embedded that will decide like, okay, if the confidence of the AI output is above a certain percentage, then we'll just automatically accept that and create those tasks. Otherwise, we want to be involved in the loop. But that's all coming soon.
And John, are you seeing that firsthand? Like, should I interpolate that you and Dematic have POCs on the ground with different retailers who are trying to experiment with this in the warehouse? Yes, I should. Okay.
Yeah, we do. We have customers now that are piloting like our forecasting algorithms and forecasting models.
Okay. All right. Wow. All right. Wow. This is really fascinating, and I love how John breaks it down. It's really simple and really easy to follow too, and gives us a good idea of where things are in the timeline. Because what's interesting to me is based on what John said, it sounds like the last part of this, the LLMs, might actually take off faster than everything else, which has been in place for a while, which also makes sense because it's pretty much. I mean, they're all software, but it's very easily attainable software too. So John, with that said, what are your main takeaways here for the audience? Like, and going back to that last point, in what order do you think all of this will happen?
Okay, so I guess maybe the first takeaway is AI is not just a single technology. It's a toolkit. So we talked about the optimization is the brains of your operation, the vision and perception are the eyes, and LLMs are the way you can interact with your software. So that's probably the first one. And the second one is like, this is, as we talked about, this is not a overnight thing. This is a journey that's going to follow a logical order based on ROI and maturity, and it will take time. Some areas will happen faster than others. But I think starting with optimization AI, I mean, there are proven models that work for that. Yeah. It's pretty measurable, pretty easy to measure that you're getting benefits. And if you're keeping the human in the loop, that gives you the confidence that, if we don't like the output, we don't have to use it. And then I think that computer vision is kind of scaling now more in your really automated facilities. That's not less so in manual warehouses, but really automated facilities. And I think you'll see that continue to scale for specific kind of process control to make sure that we're operating as efficiently as possible, and and safety and preventing downstream issues. I think that will continue to expand to more use cases in the warehouse. And then I think next year you'll probably see a lot of this generative AI, like just unlocking the value of the data through AI that's in your systems today. It's already there, so you don't have to. That is not a huge initiative. That's a software upgrade, right? To get that type of functionality out there. It's not like we have to go, install a bunch of new equipment. And then I think, eventually all these pieces will they're now pretty distinct, separate categories, but they'll all converge into a more single intelligent system that can prevent issues and optimize efficiency and orchestrate the agents orchestrating all the processes in the warehouse. So I think there will be a logical path for those to converge at some point.
Is that the AKA the brain, John? Is that what that is? Is that what that refers to? Like the proverbial AI brain?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just kind of that concept of a lights out warehouse where it's like, you can.
Wow. John, this has been so insightful. I especially love what I think this unlocked for some of the people we were talking about earlier here who are earlier in their stage of automation, and especially the AI components of automation in their warehousing facilities. I'm sure there's people that are going to want to continue this conversation, dive deeper into their own use cases with you. What's the best way for them to do that, John?
So I'm happy people can reach out to me directly. I'm john.mabe@dematic.com, or find me on LinkedIn. Also on the Dematic website, there is a site, a place there to go connect with sales.
Excellent.
All right. Well, that wraps us up. Thanks to John Mabe of Dematic. Thank you so much, John. It was great. Thanks for educating us today. And thanks to everyone out there for listening in. And on behalf of all of us at Omni Talk, as always, be careful out there.